Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Hedgebrook's Cottage Chat. This is a reschedule from April. I'm super excited to be here. I have the honor of hosting these joyous conversations, amplifying the brilliant minds of our ever growing alumni community. And I thank you so much for joining us this month as we talk writing the child self and the joy in surviving. That sounds very fancy for, I'm going to ask a couple of people I really think are amazing to talk about joy. My Hedgebrook alumna guests today are Breezy Janae and Ashley C. Ford. Breezy Janae is a poet and teaching artist living in Brooklyn. They are the author of Blessed Are the Peacemakers from 2021, which won the 2020 Cave Canem Northwestern University Press Poetry Prize. It's a mouthful, it's worth it. And After Jubilee in 2017, published by Boat Press. Brian is the recipient of the St. Botolph Emerging Artist Award, a Hedgebrook alum, and a proud Cave Canem Fellow. Their poetry has been published in Plowshares, the American Poetry Review. I hear there was a pushcart prize involved there. The Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, the Sun Magazine, Jubilat, and Waxwing, among others. Brian is a co-host of the podcast The Slave is Gone, alongside Jericho Brown and Rogue scholar F.A. Murray. Off the page, they go by Breezy. They also go by my friend. That's my people. I claim that set. Also with us today is Ashley C. Ford. Ford's New York Times bestselling memoir, Somebody's Daughter, was published by Flatiron Books in June 2021. Ford is the former host of the Chronicles of Now podcast, co-host of the HBO companion podcast, Country Radio. Lovecraft Country Radio. She currently lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, with her husband, poet and fiction writer Kelly Stacy, and their chocolate lab, Astro Renegade Fordette Stacy. Ford has written or guest edited for Elle Magazine, Slate, Teen Vogue, New York Magazine, the New York Times, Domino, Cup of Joe, and various other web and print publications. She's a bad mama jamma. That's right. My name is Amber Flame, and I am the program director here at Hedgebrook. Yes, it's my honor to be here with you. And I'm an alum as well of the Writer in Residence program. So these are my people. I'm so thrilled to be your host for this conversation, which is streaming live today, Thursday, May 12th, 2022. Okay, now that we've reloaded completely and totally, because that's what just happened. Let's see if that doesn't happen again. I'm going to add to the stream my friend Breezy and my hope to be dear bosom buddy, Ashley C. Ford. Welcome, y'all. My whole thing just reset, y'all. I was like just rainbow of deathing it for a minute. They're like, wow. And I'm the one with the live stream. So I don't know how that looked on the outside. Hope you got some cool jams, a little pause. We were back at it. But who knows?
Basically, yeah.
Thank you for joining me here today. Um, I have been looking forward to this conversation for a really, really long time. Breezy and I have talked about it when we have chatted, and you're just really awesome, Ashley. So, will you tell us what question do I want to start with? I have so many questions. Um, Tell us, how many bonnets did you end up acquiring from CVS in the sum total?
At this time, I've acquired no less, but maybe more than 5 bonnets from CVS. For sure. I'm always worried about losing them because I travel a lot and I travel with them. And I haven't lost one yet, But, I think poor kid trauma has me feeling very safe by having that many
Mm,
backups.
mm,
I'm gonna use that as my excuse for why I have so many jumpsuits. That seems accurate. I'm now working on sweatsuits, coordinateds. But I went and got a bonnet or two myself from CVS after we first spoke. What else have you, both of you, have you been acquiring? I know some of Breezy's, so I'm gonna let them share if they're willing. And what else have you been acquiring over this quarantine? What has been the little thing you could buy for your joy?
mm. I mean, my favorite thing to do for my joy is to go and buy my dog like a little outfit, or like for the holidays in particular, like she has to have like a Christmas dress. I cannot believe she did not have an Easter dress. I was slipping. That's how depression like snuck in there. Um, but yeah, I love her. I love to dress her up for holidays. Occasionally I will like dress like her as well. We'll match a little bit. Um, but yeah, like nothing gives me more joy than like putting her little raincoat on a rainy day. And then everyone's just like, oh my God, look at her raincoat. And I'm like, I know. It's adorable. Um, so that's been a quarantine thing I've been purchasing for my joy. Um, yeah.
Lily, it has a Lily. I have Lily in my mind. Lily is the name of Breezy's dog. Very, very much a comfort dog. Ashley, has Renegade gotten any outfit changes?
Um, Astro really does
Oh, Astro
not.
Renegade.
No,
Sorry.
Astro Renegade. It's all his name. Um, he doesn't really love outfits or wearing anything, but he loves getting a new lamb chop dog toy. He loves the lamb chop dog toy. But the thing that he does, and I don't know how to feel about this, but I try not to judge him, is that as soon as he gets a new one, he immediately tears its face off. And then it's his favorite one, and he carries it around and wants to like cuddle it and like sleep with it and like curl up with it, but not if it has a face. So I'm constantly replacing this lamb chop because of that. Personally, what I've been collecting, well, I moved back to the Midwest, which means the antiquing once again is sweet. And I've really gotten into Pyrex and collecting different Pyrex patterns that I really like. And tea sets. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with this book called A Bargain for Frances. And Frances was like a little, like, I don't remember if she was like a raccoon or a skunk or something. She had a stripe, I remember, and she was an animal. And she played with this other little girl bear or whatever that essentially cheated her out of her tea set. She had this beautiful porcelain tea set, and the little girl basically like bullied her into swapping for a plastic tea set. And she didn't like it as much, and she didn't like that the cups didn't make sounds when you hit them together. And she goes back to get her tea set, and the little girl is like, nope, it was a fair trade. And she's like, it's not a fair trade. And it was just this book that I loved as a kid, and I always wanted a tea set, and I never got one, and now I have like five. So
Have you gotten into those ones that are like a teapot over a cup, and it like makes a bigger teapot, but then it becomes a teacup? Have you seen those?
I just ordered one.
I love it. I got my first one as a gift for Christmas, and I was like, this is the perfect writer's gift ever. You put like three tea bags in there, you have two solid cups of tea. It is phenomenal. And there's some really fancy ones, Breezy. I'm just saying. It
That
might it
sounds
might be your
lovely.
jam.
That sounds really,
Do hot
really.
cocoa in there, hot toddies. We ain't judging, do what you gotta do to get by, just to get by. Um, I know that I could talk to you about pretty much anything and get you all chatting about anything. But I'm gonna try to stay on task a little bit. I want to know the thing you don't know about each other, maybe about each other's work, is the burden you both carry as the storyteller of your family, the person who talked about it. I was really fascinated by how many times Honestly, how many times people didn't follow up with you, Ashley, when you were like, "My mom, we didn't talk about," like, I'm like, "Come on. What does it mean to carry that weight in your family as the storyteller, the holder, the keeper of the keys, the one who digs, the one who goes and finds out and investigates, asks the hard questions, and then shares it?"
It can be lonely, but I also think that one of the things that has been revealed to me over and over again in this process is that, yeah, it can be lonely and it can be a little isolating. And, people might say things about you, they might treat you differently. All of that can happen. But what you find out is that you might be specifically built for that. Not that it doesn't hurt and not that it doesn't suck, but that for some reason there is something inside you that is like, yeah, well, I'm going to be okay. Like maybe these reactions that I'm getting, someone else wouldn't be okay and they wouldn't be able to move forward in a way that felt true to themselves. Maybe they would really feel that tug to abandon themselves in favor of a collective delusion. But there was always something in me that made me think, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do it the other way. It's not, I think it gets spelled out often as like so brave or so courageous. And I think for some people, that might be true. That might be an accurate description. For me, it often feels like, yeah, but I wasn't ever going to do it the other way. I wasn't ever going to hide. I wasn't ever going to spend my whole life lying. That was never my plan. That might have been somebody else's plan for me, but in my blood and bones, that was never the answer. So, yeah, and I do get asked that question a lot about whether or not my mom read the book or how she feels about the book. And I always tell people she didn't read it. She probably won't read it. And it's so interesting the look that comes on people's faces because it's like, how could that be? How could that be true? That's your mom. And I know that when they say that and when they're thinking that, what they're really thinking about is their mom and how their mom would absolutely read the book, how their mom would have asked them about it every time they saw her, how their mom would be passing out copies to her friends and shouting about how proud she is, how their mom would show up, how their mom, blah, 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 blah. But I have to sit there and look at them, go through all those emotions and know inside myself, it's okay, Ashley. That was never your mom. That's not something you lost because you told this story. You've always been you, and she's always been her. So it is what it is.
Wow. Um, I feel that I echo what you said about like the choice being to either really choose yourself or choose to abandon yourself to that collective delusion. Um, and just like how impossible that feels, there's just this part of me, part of myself that just knows that like, no, I need to say this. I can't hold water. I can't keep a secret. Just, like, or not these secrets in particular, um, would kill me otherwise. Um, and like flame writing for me has sort of just been my way of surviving, and just sort of processing. And it was like it's the way that I can have control over the situation, um, and sort of, yeah, make it into something meaningful, or something that someone else can see and say, oh, I've lived that too. Because the other thing is, I try to remind myself that I'm not all that unique, like I'm sure that when I say this is what happened to me, at least one other person is going to say, yeah, me too. Um, and I know like what that meant for me to read, books and see and be like, wow, yeah, me too. And like, just like that comfort that that gave me. Um, and like how it made me less lonely in a way, you know, than the way the books can make us less lonely. Um, yeah.
Breezy, can I ask you a question? Is this
Yeah.
okay, Amber? One of the things you just said was that you knew that you were going to be good at keeping secrets, that you can't hold water. I'm the same way. I am the same. And one of the things that I've realized for myself is that I am great at keeping things that are sacred, sacred. I'm great at privacy. Fantastic at that. But secrets are different. And I think it's because I think that often people who don't want us to talk about how they harmed us conflate secrets, the shame of secrets, with the sacredness of privacy.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's true for you as well?
Well, I mean, I agree that there's that difference between, you know, like it's like there are things I can talk about a lot of things that feel personal, you know, pretty openly. But then there are the things that are just like that everybody doesn't need to know. Um, you know, and that are mine, that I'm trying to keep mine. Um, and it's sometimes hard to know where that line is because I can be such a confessional poet. But then it's just like, just because I put that in the poem does not mean I'm here to talk to you about it in detail. I wrote a poem about it, perchance because I didn't want to talk about it. Um, yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thing to like to line to walk. I mean, it's I can't. There are times that I'm just like that I feel that loneliness of being the person that's speaking out in the family, you know, um and sort of it feels to them like I'm invading their privacy. Um but it's like, but I was there, you know, this is like what I lived. And I'm still trying, I'm trying to figure it out, you know, and this is my way. Um yeah.
And you know what they say, three people can keep a secret if two of them are dead. So I ain't dead. You didn't kill me. So I'm here to tell the truth. And I
Well,
know that there's so much hurt, and the writing the truth is a hard burden for sure. Um and what I love about both of y'all's writing, where I saw the big intersection, was that sort of ability to unflinchingly, well, maybe flinchingly, Breezy. I don't know if I'm
I know
like, well,
people
actually,
probably
we
complaining
flinched
and
quite a
just like,
bit.
why me? Do
Why
I have to
me?
write this?
Why have I have been burdened upon this? But like, so I wanna talk a little bit from a different angle. What is the truth of the matter is if you sell your book, or it becomes something big, things happen for you. Some things maybe ease. A little bit of the path might be cleared for you before you come bushwhacking in, right? So somebody's daughter has blown the fuck up. If you all don't know this, you should look at the act. I was like, okay, we got to trim this down. So the accolades keep coming, and so deservedly so. Like this is a I teach in the prisons, and I've done it for a long time. And I know that stories about incarceration, stories about the lived experience, stories about from the person, like, since I've been down by Gilda Shepherd is starting to blow up. I work for the If Project. They have a documentary that has gone over around the world because of the necessity of this story being told. It is a big American secret, right? Like what this justice system has has poisoned so many people's lives. So I know you've been asked about that. I know you talked about that. But what I want to actually ask you about, Ashley, is what does it mean? What was the get free? What was the get free for you in writing and telling this story and having people need to hear it? What has it eased for you, or provided for you?
I think that people sometimes ask me if writing it felt like therapy or if it felt cathartic. And I would say no, but it did point out the reasons why I still needed to go to therapy, and maybe what I needed to talk about while I was in there. So there was that. And I think that that helped. But I think the thing that helped most of all was that in order to write this book, I had to look back on my life so far, which is a relatively short life so far. And I had to confront myself. I had to confront every version of me that I've been and tried to bury at some point. I had to confront every version of myself that I was still angry with, every version of myself that I was disappointed in or that was disappointed in me. I had to sort of like walk this circle backward, and the reflections of myself that existed in the back, I had to look square in the eye and be like, okay, this is how I feel about you. How do you feel about me? And we had to talk. And that sounds so weird. I feel like it sounds so woo woo, but I don't know how else to describe what happened, because even now, as I move forward, when I find myself doing things that are actually a step back for me mentally and emotionally, um, unfortunately, I've talked to that person back there and they know I'm not supposed to be back there. And so now when I go back and I look back at, these different versions of me, these different iterations of me that make up the whole of me, um, there are a lot of things I can no longer lie to myself about and that I can't really get away with anymore. Because I think if there's anything inside of me that is most true, or that I've believed is most true for the longest time in my life, it's that, people tell lies, and you might tell a lie at some point in your life, but it's probably most important not to lie to yourself, especially not about yourself. And so that little like spark of integrity and moral reason um, does a lot of work when I find myself repeating old destructive behaviors, replaying old uh, critical or demonizing scripts about myself that would play in my head, that I cut the tape on those tapes, but that doesn't mean that tape doesn't exist, right? And I got to make sure I'm not still feeding parts of it into the machine. It's hard. It's hard all the time, but the book really gave me a place to practice what is now, I think, sort of like a way of life for me, which is that, look back and look forward, but be here. Just be here and listen to what the future you is asking you for, and listen to what the past you is asking you to never do again. Please. Never again, at all times.
You just dropping knowledge bombs,
I
knowledge
know.
bombs. Okay, come on, Breezy. I know you had some
Um,
thoughts.
no, I was just gonna repeat that. Look back and look forward, but be here is like such a good way to live. Yeah. And I don't know, as I was thinking, as you were talking about having to sort of look back at your different versions of yourselves and talk and sit down and talk. I like uh, have this poem that these poems that are just like love poems to Brian, which are to me talking to my childhood self and trying to reason with the childhood self who is very much like in full temper tantrum mode in some moments, and being like, what do you want me to do with this anger, like where am I supposed to put it? um yeah, no, but I feel like I was just like nodding along to everything you were saying, just like, oh my goodness, coming for my heart.
I think it's like you said earlier, Breezy, when you said that you don't feel like you're that unique, or like the
Mm-hmm.
story is that unique. I used to be really, really scared of telling the truth or saying the wild like concepts about meeting yourself on the road back to yourself or whatever. Like I used to be so scared of that. Um, and I was scared of that, I think, because I thought it was just me.
Mm.
But every time I start talking my shit a little bit and like kind of feeling myself, there's somebody there who's like, no, I know what you're talking about. I
Mm.
know what you mean. Like maybe I wouldn't have said it that way, or maybe I
Mm.
wouldn't have described it that way, but I know what you mean. And I think that we think of like not being unique as a bad thing sometimes, but that's the
It's
beauty of it.
comforting. Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, is
Mm-hmm.
that like all this evidence that we're actually more irreparably connected than we can even imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's comforting for sure. For sure.
There's something so I think that's the calling. That's the sacred part that you know, like of being a writer. There are some people who are called to being a writer because they must tell the story. They must tell the truth. They must lay out what happened, and there's something in us that knows, the ones who are pulled in that way, not because they're just like a really creative. I've met writers who are just really creative and they can produce and produce and produce because they just have so many ideas. And I have ideas for days, but there's difference between the ideas that I end up making into something because I need to, and the ideas where I'm like, that would be fun to play one day. And I do both. But there's something about the ones that are in that calling that they they fiercely guard their creative space. They insist that the stories are theirs to tell. And I think that it's not a question so much as like, what do you like? What have you had to do really to like for yourself to like fiercely guard the right to tell to tell your story, to tell what happened to you and what happened to the people that you watched happen.
Well, I'll say I was fortunate uh as a child. Um my parents were arguing about something, and then my dad, like on his way out of the house, turned to me and was like, write whatever you need to write about me. Like in like and I don't know, I was like just a teenager, and I like always wrote, but I didn't really write about them like that then. Um but he said that, and like I've always felt free to write what I needed to write about him. It's a different story with my mama. Uh but like I have felt grateful at least to have, permission to have been given that, because there was a lot that I needed to write, and to just have been told that, like, even before I knew, what exactly it was that I needed to write, that I could. um yeah, that was a gift, like I go back to it. And like in publishing the second book, my dad, um, you know, was very proud of the first one, which was not about family at all, and was like selling it at his job and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, dude, this next book, you gotta read it before you go trying to push that at your job. This is maybe not the one. Um, and he was like, it's all right, it's all right, and then he called me a few days later and was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much everything I did affected you." And it was really, um I was like frying french fries for myself and like cooking, and I was just like, I didn't expect I was like, "Okay, thank you." Like I almost like I'm trying to stop saying it's okay when people apologize to me, because it wasn't okay. Um And so, but I was like, you know, um, thanks, but before that, but I, I it's not that I have never had to guard, my right to tell other stories, and to tell other truths that have been more challenging. But it was really um, it meant a lot, that at least just like do it, write whatever you're gonna write, and that he saw that I was going to do it before I even recognized it.
Um, I think what happened to me was I suddenly realized I was a whole person the whole time. Um, like I definitely thought of my child self. Like I knew that I was a person, and that I was separate from everybody else when I was a child, that I had my own consciousness, you know what I mean? But as I got into adulthood and moved through it, I realized that I felt like I owed my mom all of this silence. I felt like my silence was in some way my gratitude to her for, I guess, her sacrifice of ever having me in the first place. Um, but I realized that thinking made me think of myself inherently as a burden. It made me think of my very existence, like my life, my whole childhood must have been such a burden. I owe my mom my silence because that is the only real way to be grateful for the burden I was to her as a child. And it took me a really long time to understand that children are not burdens and that they should never be treated like they are by anybody, by anybody. And the fact that I was through so many different experiences, circumstances, things that were said to me, things that were done to me, very clearly given the message that my very existence was a burden on my mother. Um, because of that, I felt like I owed her a debt instead of had a connection with her through the gift of life. Um, and when I started to undo that thinking so that I could be well, not because I didn't like my mom or because I wanted to write wild stuff about my mom or tell the truth about my mom. I was just trying to be well. I was just trying to be okay. And in the pursuit of my own mental and emotional health, what I found was that the evidence for this belief that I was not allowed to own my story didn't hold up. It didn't hold up against reason. And I had to, the same way I had to figure out the difference between secrets and privacy, I also had to figure out the difference between what was understandable and what was reasonable. And there were a lot of things that were said and done to me that the people around me treated like it was understandable, even if it wasn't reasonable. And no reasonable person should have behaved that way. It was given a pass because it was understandable. So I had to untangle all of that, the difference between those beliefs of what those two things were. It was a lot of untangling things that had been conflated. It was untangling the belief that hitting kids is normal. Hitting kids isn't normal. It's just common. And common and normal are not the same thing. A shared belief among a group of people, a culture, a society, or whatever, does not make a truth. And I realized that I knew that the whole time, that the reason I got so upset and so hurt after being hit wasn't because of the lingering effects of the physical pain. it was because it felt like an affront to my very nature. It felt like I was born into this world to this person. I did not ask to be here by any means. She brought me into this world. I'm here now and I'm doing my best, and it is never enough. And maybe I am never enough. Maybe I will never be enough, because if I cannot please my mother, who is supposed to love me most in the world, if I upset my mother, the person who loves and protects me most in the world, so much that she has to bring me physical pain in order to correct me, a person who doesn't hit the men who hurt her, who doesn't hit any of her sisters when they hurt her, who I've never heard getting mad at somebody at her job and hitting them, the people who are the same size as her, comes home and hits me, who is significantly smaller. What does that mean about me? I came up with a child's logic for that, and I had to confront that child logic as an adult and say, no, I was never a burden. I've always been a blessing. And if I've always been a blessing and I've always been a whole human being the entire time, then everything that happened to me belongs to me. If I got to be the one to deal with it, I got to be the one to heal it and fix it and pay all this money in therapy, then yeah, the story is mine. I own it. Sorry, I rambled, but yeah.
No, you just held a whole therapy session for us. Wow, so many things to unpack. Like I am going to go back and listen to this and write down some things that I need to unpack. This like soothing of the mother, realizing what the mother wound was. Okay, gosh, let me back up a little bit. And Breezy, I know you have thoughts, so I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you have it in just a minute. But I have been talking about how fortunate I have felt to be able to write with the freedom of not worrying about what my mom has to say about it, which is its own kind of freedom for sure. And so I am curious about the people like, Breezy's one of my writing partners. I met Breezy at Hedgebrook. So we've known each other now for years. And that's part of why I wanted them to meet you, Ashley. I was like, oh, you're going to love Ashley. Ashley's awesome. So I knew we would nerd out. And I want to nerd out forever with you. But um, one of the things that like I'm so curious when I hear Breezy's works in progress is that procession of forgiving yourself for telling the truth about other people's wrongdoings. And then holding your ground when they want you to apologize for telling the truth about what they did. Like if you wanted me to write about you differently, you should have behaved better and all that stuff. And like I've always been like really, I don't know, I think a little happy, to be frank, that I haven't had to worry about what my mama is going to say about anything I do or say for the rest of my life. That is one of the gifts that has come. And I guiltily say this, but also happily say this. So I ask this question often because I'm like, what does it mean to like put this in front of your family or the people you're writing about and be like, the whole world knows now. um but what you said here about like it's deeper than that. It's about confronting how you that burden of your that's where you stopped. I was like, okay, the burden you assumed you were to your mother, and that she reaffirmed in her behaviors, even if she would never say that, which she may have, right? Like, and I was like, did my mom ever actually say we were a burden? No, she just framed it in a way that made it clear that it was hard to be my mother. And I really ingrained that. So much to unpack there. Wow, you did not ramble. I'm rambling. Breezy, go.
Um, no, I'm still thinking about understandable versus reasonable. Uh, that is those are the words that I needed. That I needed. Um, but I don't know. Thinking about sort of like what you were saying, Flame, like that question of like, how do you confront that part of you that feels guilty? Maybe or um I don't know. I just was just thinking that like, like with my poems, even though I'm telling the truth about people I love, and that love comes through. Um and so and I know that about my poems, and so anyone who loves me and reads that work, including, like my mother, um, who, yeah, including my mother. I would hope that they would be able to see that love first and foremost, um, and that they shouldn't, that otherwise they shouldn't be bothered because I'm telling the truth, you know? Yeah, yeah. I like often tell myself, like I want my relationship with my mom to be strong and beautiful and all those things. And maybe it will and maybe it won't be. But like I know that like the first step to that is we cannot get there with me being silent. I'm not giving her an opportunity to show up for me in a way that's real, by remaining silent. She can only show up for me. Well, she could show up for me because she's my mother. But as like a present day adult, one thing I can do for our relationship is be real about what was and how that has affected me. Um, and so, and that's like a gift, to like bother staying to be real, because I could have just said, you know what, growing up was traumatic. I don't want to talk to y'all. Unless it's about like some reparation money, I have nothing to say. But no, I did not choose that. I chose to sort of choose to wrestle with these feelings, um and try, to let them know what it was, and um my work, I've like realized at some point in therapy, we got to this place where we were like, oh my God, I think I've been writing poems this whole time so that my mother will finally understand. Like I've been trying to like write it out so she can see it. And I was like, no, it can't. That can't be the reason I'm a poet. It can't all come back to that. Um, but if it does, I have presented a whole body of work, for these people. And if you love me, um, I don't need you to read it, but if you read it, you will see the love. You will feel the love, and um, we should be able to lovingly proceed forward. Hopefully, you know.
My mom used to tell me I wasn't allowed to have diaries or journals growing
Mm,
up. And it was because my mom used to say, "You're not about to write about me."
mm.
So, sometimes they bring these things on themselves.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
You're like, maybe I'll remember about you instead. But guess
Yeah.
what? At some point, you ain't gonna be the boss of me no more, and I'm gonna tell it.
You should
Yeah.
have just let me write it down. I
Yeah,
probably
just
would have
let me.
worked through it.
Yeah.
And also, like, think about you would have been able to document the joys a lot more
Oh yeah.
accurately too, right? Like, because the moments of grace that were in there, it's a lot harder to hold on to those when shit's racking up,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I Yeah, I think my mom would be very glad that she doesn't have to experience me writing about her. And also, there is love there, and there is. I mean, the only reason I'm even bothering is because it mattered, you know. So if you didn't matter, would you rather not matter? that's your other. That's your other option there. Okay, so we were going to have this conversation in April. I hope we were all looking forward to it. I know I was really geeking out about it. Situations occurred, we weren't able to have it. And now I find myself really struggling with depression, as I said to both Ashley and Breezy before coming on. Good thing I like planned and prepped for it in April, because I would not have been able to pull it together today. Like I'm struggling so hard. There's Mercury went into retrograde yesterday, Jupiter's in Aries, there's an eclipse on Sunday. I'm for whatever reason, I'm really like I'm struggling, and it's particularly hard to be human right now. And so I'm going to ask you to think about like to tell me a story of a belly laugh. Like when you think of laughing so much that your stomach hurts recently, or like one of your favorite people to crack up with. Tell me something about like true outbursts of joy. I need to hear a good story. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be complicated, can be mostly internal. I just want to smile with you as you remember like a moment of joy.
My husband makes me laugh like nobody else in the world because he's this incredibly kind, really sweet guy, but he will gossip and he will throw shade. He just will do it quietly. And he's really just incredibly funny to me. And he's also like half hillbilly. So there's a lot going on there. He goes on these rants and they crack me up. So not too long ago, there was a small incident where we were in a restaurant, and there was an older gentleman who bumped into me, and then acted really mad at me after he bumped into me, and then told a manager that they should train the people who work there better because he thought I worked there. It was incredibly wild and racist all at the same time. And my husband, like, I'm like, this is, I'm kind of very dismissive of it. My husband jumps up and he's talking to the manager. And I hear him talking to him and being very, direct and very clear. And being like, this is unacceptable. Like, you cannot have people in here talking to people like this. This is my wife, or whatever. And then, like, I hear him break into the hillbilly side of himself. And he leans into the manager and he goes, and he better leave because I'll tell you just like this. Nobody in my entire family has ever been afraid to whoop an old man's ass. And I started laughing and could not. I laughed for most of the rest of the night because I'm like, he was at first so calm and so like, hey, but like serious and direct. And then very quickly, it was like the Ford Ranger in the back came out of his voice. Like, and he was like, I'll whoop an old man's ass. And I'm like, oh my God. So that was my last belly laugh.
That's a good one. Thank you. I can tell you,
Right.
and I'll tell you this right now. When when the hillbilly leans in and says, and I'll tell you this for certain and for true. I love that. Oh my gosh, I can picture it. The lean in, not afraid of whooping old man's ass. That's so great. That's so great. We need more of this. Breezy, got a story for us?
Oh, that is so great. I can't remember my last well, yeah, I can't remember my last belly laugh, even though I feel like I find myself laughing at myself like randomly. Especially now that I'm like living alone for the first time in my life. There's just nothing to stop me from being weird. Um but one thing that gave me joy recently is I teach like third and fifth graders poetry on Mondays, co-teach. And one of the groups of kids were just like, so are you a boy or a girl? And I was just like, both, all of the above. And they were like, no, 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 no. Are you like, and they kept trying to like phrase it different ways. And I was like, well, I use the pronouns they, them. And then they were like, uh-huh, uh-huh. But and it was just like I could just like see their gears turning in their head as I kept saying both, all of the above. And I don't know, I just like love that look of just like I'm trying. It's like, I don't know, they were also really sweet about it. And I was just like, I don't know, guys, I'm delightful. I'm glad that like you're thinking about it, trying to understand me a little bit more.
I love that. And they do. They're like, huh. Um, they figure it out, but they'll keep asking. And I love that they'll just keep asking.
Right?
Um, that's the beautiful part. Okay, so what you need to know about these phenomenal writers is that they've got really, really amazing things in the works. There's Ashley, you're so busy. I know you're like doing all the promotional tours, all the speaking, all the interviews, all the reviews, all the everything for your book. But I want to ask, what are you working on? Are you writing? Are you able to write? And what are you working on?
I'm kind of, yeah. Well, the answer is yes. I'm able to write, thank goodness, and I have been, but I'm really enjoying this little piece of life where I don't owe anybody any of my writing, and so I'm trying to just kind of keep that going for as long as possible until I have to share it with anybody. Um, but I can tell you like that I'm working on some essays, like an essay collection. I'm also working on a short story collection. I haven't written fiction in a really long time, but I got weirdly inspired not too long ago with just like an idea that popped into my head, and it is spinning out, which is a lot of fun. And I'm also trying to learn how to do some screenwriting because that is definitely not something that I've like worked on or trained in before, besides reading books about it. But now I'm actually trying to do it, and I'm finding that it's really fun.
That's awesome. That's exciting. I love that you are going. So you're going multi-genre. Are you a multidisciplinary artist too? Do you like paint or throw pots or?
I mean, I did do some pottery earlier this year and decided
I
it was
nailed it.
not
I
for
don't know.
me. But I mean, I make podcasts.
Hmm.
I am not good at any kind of visual artistry. Anything where you have to draw a straight line or know how, can't do it. If you have to cut anything in a straight line, can't do it. I didn't even think they let you pass kindergarten without knowing how to do that, but they must have just said, we give up and let her go. Uh, I love doing those kinds of things. I love doing things with my hands and making things with my hands. I am just not proficient at those things, but I do them anyway because it makes me happy.
It
So,
makes
yeah, I'm
me
always doing all
happy.
kinds of stuff. But if it's for work, it's probably writing or podcasting because I obviously like talking.
No, I don't know why you keep thinking you talk so much. Like I asked more questions than I thought I would. I thought I was gonna get y'all chatting, and I was just gonna sit back in the cut and listen. But I went through all my questions. I'm on my last question right now. Breezy, Breezy, tell the world
The
what you got
world.
going on.
What do I have? Well, I love what Ashley said about like the joy of having writing that's not due to anyone. Like I like only really write poems. But I wrote like a short story. Or like I wrote two over this past year. Um and I like just wrote an essay and I'm like, I don't know what to do with these things, and I don't know if they're good or not, but they don't have to be because nobody expects me to write a fiction. They only expect the poems, which is the thing that I can't write right now because I technically just finished my third book and like gave it to my editor. Uh,
Finished because it's sold. Like, be clear, not just finished and be like, I have a manuscript, maybe we can sell this somewhere, but something already bought that was owed and now no longer owed. They
yes,
owed a debt they did not pay. Now they paid the debt and they do not
yes,
owe.
yes, yes. My third manuscript is no longer owed. It is, well, I still need to figure out how some technical things, but uh it's like it's done. I'm just no longer the existential crisis in my back of my brain seeing like, well, how are you going to resolve this book? um yeah. I'm working on, I guess, what am I working on then? I've been yeah, the prose. I've been trying to write prosy things. I just wrote an essay on like losing God, which was really necessary, kind of, to write. And I don't know if it was necessary for the world to see it, but I enjoyed making it, you know? So we'll see.
No pressure, right? But
Mhm,
probably is necessary. I was like, well, we need to talk about losing God. I know we have and will again. But yeah,
mhm.
no, I think the world needs to hear that one.
We'll see.
So both Ashley and Breezy are a part in one way or another of our inaugural, our first ever writers conference for Hedgebrook this coming fall. Um, Ashley will be in conversation about audiobooks, of which I believe she's collected a prize called the Audie for the audiobook for somebody's daughter. And she's going to be talking to our board president, Sarah Latipo Manica. Um, and having a wonderful industry talk conversation about what it means to break into that world. A lot more technical and interviewee style, I believe, but we'll see how that knocks out. Um, and Breezy is one of our phenomenal instructors for this year. We're wrapping together themes and ideas and pulled together strings of conversations that have been had already. I'm really excited. I also have Ashley pinned for next year's writers conference. So we had to write that in early. You can come to the conference because it's online. So even if you miss it, if you register for it, you will still have access to it. So please, Christina, to answer your comment, yes, you can absolutely, absolutely participate. I'm super excited. Thank you both for being here and for spending some time with me talking. I could talk to you both for a very long time.
Same.
Thank you, Flame. It was amazing.
Yay, I'm so glad. I am definitely smiling more as I wrap this great cottage chat. We have another one next week with Kristen Chen and Vanessa Wah, who are doing some phenomenal things. I'm super excited. I hope you will join us. And if you make a donation for a cottage chat, and cottage chat's names today or really anytime, and say it's pinned for cottage chat, you will be entered into a raffle for 25% off that said writers conference. So please check that out. And I hope I see you here next week for our next cottage chat. And if not, catch us up on YouTube because we have a whole list of cottage chats you may have missed in the past. Once again, I'm Amber Flame. So glad to be here. Thank you again to Breezy and Ashley C. Ford for joining us. I don't know why I like saying Ashley C. Ford as the whole thing, but I do. So that's what I said. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Talk to you soon.